From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Members of Congress are required to show up in person to vote on any measures. That creates challenges for representatives who are in the final weeks of pregnancy or who just gave birth. Colorado Representative Brittany Pettersen, a Democrat, understands these rules from experience, and she says they're unfair. She's due to give birth to her second child in a few days, which means she is under travel restrictions and unable to be in Washington. But Pettersen and several other representatives have proposed a solution. Pettersen wants the House of Representatives to pass a resolution that would allow new or expectant parents to vote by proxy when they can't be in Washington. That means they'd appoint another person to vote in their place. But there's been some pushback to the plan, including from House Speaker Mike Johnson. Representative Brittany Pettersen talked to me from her home in Lakewood about being an expectant mother in Congress and the details of her proposal.
What it would do, it would give up to 12 weeks of proxy voting for this limited circumstance. If you are giving birth, if you're unable to be there in person for a medical reason, like me right now, I'm in Colorado, unable to fly, and it feels incredibly unfair that I'm unable to represent my constituents at this time. And then also, once I give birth, that I would have that time at home taking care of my newborn. It's the most vulnerable time that your kid will ever have in their life, where they need their parents the most.
Right.
And so it's not just for women, it's also for the dads. As you probably know, we have a lot more dads in Congress. So
right.
I will be the 14th person in U.S. history to give birth while serving in Congress after thousands of people have served. That's how rare it is. And I can tell you that Congress was not made for people like me. And we really need to change and modernize that.
And I know that you are, as you mentioned, at home in Colorado as you wait to deliver your baby. I want to say congratulations to you, by the way.
Thank you so much.
I'm curious if you considered other options, like staying in Washington and having your baby there?
Yeah, so we've been going back and forth. I could have gone to DC for the first few weeks before I give birth, but I wouldn't be home with my doctors, my support system. I have a toddler. He's in school. I'm going to pull him out of school and have him in my small apartment in DC. It's so complicated on how you navigate this as a family. And so ultimately, we decided to prioritize the health and well-being of my newborn, my family, to be home in Colorado and get back as soon as I'm physically able.
House Speaker Mike Johnson has not been receptive to your proposal. He says it's not supported by the Constitution and that it opens the door to other exceptions for representatives who say they can't vote in person. What is your take on that argument?
We can bring these narrow exceptions if that's what Congress wanted to do. This is a very narrow provision, narrow circumstances. And, it's frustrating when I hear the constitutional argument. Every time that this has been challenged in court, it has been found to be constitutional. And I also want to point out, Speaker Johnson used this many times during COVID, and now he's saying that proxy voting is unconstitutional.
Are you at all optimistic that Speaker Johnson will change his mind?
Well, I think that he's feeling the pressure. We have lots of support. It's supported by so many Republicans. When I talk to people on both sides of the aisle that have these stories of their newborns in the NICU and their inability to be there when they were worried about if their baby was going to survive, and they were flying to DC to vote. This is the minimal step that we can make to make Congress more accessible to families and regular people. It's an important step forward, but it is the bare minimum of what we should be doing.
As you mentioned, this resolution has bipartisan support. You have a couple of co-sponsors from across the aisle, including Florida Republican Anna Paulina Luna. She has a reputation for being a staunch conservative. She told Colorado Newsline recently that Congress needs to get with the times. What has it been like to work with Luna on this measure?
Well, so I come from the Colorado legislature. I served for 10 years, and I always worked across the aisle. Some of my closest friends who I still talk to are Republicans. I'm not used to the way that Congress functions, where everyone goes to their corners, prepares for battle, don't work together, don't get to know each other, don't compromise. And there's a lot that we disagree on, but I'm grateful that we can come together on an issue like this. And, that's how our government was set up. It's supposed to force compromise. It's so dysfunctional because we stopped talking to each other. So, when it comes to finding common ground with somebody who I don't agree with on a lot of things, she doesn't agree with me, but I'm happy that we can, fight together on this.
This job sounds like a tough job to do in person during a pregnancy. Was there a time recently when you felt that acutely?
Oh my gosh. Some women love being pregnant, and I appreciate that. I don't know if it's because they don't remember what it was actually like, but I am not one of those. I'm grateful. I'm healthy. I have a healthy pregnancy. There are, of course, special moments, but I definitely am ready to not be pregnant anymore. And towards the end of this, when you're in DC, this job is kind of like having 3 jobs. You're starting early in the morning, and then my normal schedule is showing up at home after numerous events at 10 at night and collapsing in my bed and then doing it again the next day. And so it has definitely been physically challenging. Now that I'm home, while I feel very frustrated that my vote isn't being counted, very grateful not to be going back and forth, going through the airport and on airplanes.
And that's an important thing to, not forget. You have bills to vote on as part of your job, bills that can come to the floor at any time. What bills did you miss that you were eager to get to vote on?
Well, so what we're doing right now is we're registering how I would have voted on everything that comes up now, and also explaining why I couldn't be there, which is because I'm unable to fly. I have medical restrictions right now. It's unsafe for me. So, these are difficult. Some of these bills are very divisive, frustrating. Not having my vote counted it tears me apart because it's difficult not to be present. One of the more frustrating ones, the immigration bill that's going through right now, when I think about, some of the provisions that we might be able to work on to make it make more sense on how it would be implemented, it's so broad and overreaching. And when I think about the Trump administration and what's going to happen, it's heartbreaking to think about what the next 4 years looks like. So even though I couldn't have stopped that bill, I am frustrated that my vote wasn't on record.
Brittany Pettersen represents Colorado's 7th Congressional District. She's pushing for a resolution that would let representatives who are expectant parents and new parents cast votes by proxy. We'll put links to more coverage of this story in our show notes and at KUNC.org. If you want to hear more interviews from In The NoCo, we've got a podcast. Check out our archive of conversations with fascinating Coloradans at KUNC.org or wherever you get podcasts. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.